How many of you have been to an open classroom before? How many is this the first time you've been to the open classroom? Wonderful. Well, welcome to lots of old friends who've been with us sometimes for a number of years, and welcome to all of you who are new to the open classroom. This is actually the 10th anniversary semester of the open classroom. We started in the spring of 2008 when we looked at the 21st century city. And I shared this platform, for those of you who may remember way back in 2008, shared this platform with Paul Grogan, the president of the Boston Foundation. And then in the fall of 2008, you may remember we had an election then, Michael Dukakis and I coordinated a class very similar to this. So we're back again, 4 years later, looking at policy advice to the president. So we're very excited to have you here. Let me also add that I could not be prouder, I couldn't be happier having Joan Fitzgerald lead the School of Public Policy in its new endeavors as we move into the future. She's a noted expert on green cities. Her great book, Emerald Cities, is something you should all be reading. And she has done a marvelous job of helping build the school to this point and is taking it to a whole new level. I'll be around. I'm still working here. I'm not retiring. You'll see me. But I'm glad we've got new people coming in, including some of our new marvelous faculty who you'll meet to do this. We are going to be doing a lot of things this semester. We've never had a collection of speakers like you've seen. If you've seen the website, I'm going to show you in a second what we're going to be doing. But the idea behind this course, as was true in 2008, was to take a relatively dispassionate view of the great issues that this campaign is all about and the great issues that this country will face over the next 4 years. And we're going to be doing it with a range of speakers who span the political spectrum, from those who are passionate supporters of Mr. Obama to people who are actually giving key economic advice to Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan. And we're going to be looking at the key issues from the economy, looking at fiscal policy next week, and monetary policy a couple weeks later. We'll be looking at foreign policy with some of the finest diplomats the United States has ever had, and people like Graham Allison and Nicholas Burns, Steve Kinzer, formerly of the New York Times. We're going to be looking at health policy, both the so-called Obamacare, but we're also going to be looking at the cost containment issues with some of the most expert in the field. We'll be looking at crime and punishment. What do we do about our cities? We'll have Ed Davis, the police commissioner, with us, and Ed Howell from Street Safe Boston. We're going to be having quite an array of folks. Next week, of course, possibly one of the greatest meetings you could imagine, Larry Summers, the former Secretary of the Treasury, and Greg Mankiw, the chairman of the Harvard Economics Department and one of the chief economic advisors to Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan. So I hope you'll all be here. Bring your friends. Don't tell the fire marshal, because I think we'll be filming every seat in the house. Okay? So that is what we're going to be doing. Here are, if you just want to look at those topics, tonight Mayor Warren and I are going to introduce the course. Our co-conveners, Michael Dukakis and Speaker Robert DeLeo, the Speaker of the Massachusetts House, are in Charlotte. They'll be listening to Mr. Clinton tonight. You'll have time after class to go home and see that if you wish. And Sonia Chang-Diaz, our other convener, is finishing up her race because she has primary tomorrow. So she begged off today, but you'll see them next week. As I said, next week, Greg Mankiw and Larry Summers. Following that, we're going to be looking at industrial policy. We'll be looking at labor policy and trade policy with my close friend and colleague at the MIT Sloan School, Tom Kochen, who's been looking at the whole question of jobs and job programs. He's been sending lots of advice to the current president. And John Poca, our colleague here at Northeastern University, who is a leading expert on industrial policy, has written on banking regulation and deregulation, has written extraordinary stuff about the auto bailout. He'll be joining us. On September 26th, we're going to have Eric Rosengren. Eric is the current president and CEO of the Boston Federal Reserve Bank. He's probably the most outspoken member of the Federal Reserve Board of Governors. It appears that Mr. Bernanke has been listening very carefully as he has been arguing apparently persuasively that the Fed has to do even more to deal with the unemployment issue. We also hope to have, and we're pretty sure that she's confirmed, With Eric Rosengren will be Kathy Minahan, who, by the way, taught a course here with me in 2009 on economic growth and social justice. She's the immediate past CEO and president of the Boston Fed and is now the dean of the business school at Simmons College. So she'll be joining us. In October, we're going to take a look at income inequality and social mobility. I am going to go back to a piece I wrote back in the 1990s with apologies to Agatha Christie called Murder on the Inequality Express. We're going to be taking a look at why has inequality grown so rapidly. And joining me that day will be Kathy Bradbury, who's a senior economist at the Boston Federal Reserve Bank, and again, one of the country's leading experts on income and social mobility. We also hope to have William Julius Wilson, a leading sociologist at Harvard, and we'll be celebrating in another few weeks the 30th anniversary of his very famous book, The Truly Disadvantaged. We then switch to foreign policy. And joining us on October 10th are both Graham Allison, professor of government at the Harvard Kennedy School and one of the founders of the Kennedy School, former Assistant Secretary of Defense in the Bush administration, as well as Juliet Kayyem, who some of you may know from her column in the Boston Globe, who also lectures at Harvard. We'll be looking at defense spending and defense deployment. October 17th, we'll be looking at foreign policy and homeland security. Nicholas Burns, professor at the Kennedy School, also a very well-known and distinguished diplomat, and Steve Kinzer, former chief foreign correspondent for the New York Times, who spent many years in Nicaragua, in Turkey, in Germany, and also spent time in Iran. We'll then turn to healthcare, another major issue, and we'll look at the current Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare. We'll have Mike Dukakis, who is an expert on that, joined by our colleague in the law school, Wendy Parmet, who has been studying this whole issue. On October 31st, we'll take a look at the cost containment issue, which is really the tough nut to crack. Steve D'Amato will be joining us. He's the former chief counsel to the Massachusetts Division of Insurance. Regina Hertzlinger, who's an expert on healthcare financing, who is at the Harvard Business School at this point. Jim Roosevelt, who's the president and CEO of Tufts Health Plan, and David Seltz, who's now special advisor to the governor on healthcare costs and was with the Senate before that. And then on November 7th, less than 24 hours after the polls close in Massachusetts, we will be doing a post-election analysis. All of us co-conveners will be there, but we're also trying to invite some others to join us, including Charlie Baker, former Republican candidate for governor in Massachusetts, and several other who can kind of analyze what happened just yesterday. What happened in the presidential race, what happened in the Senate, what happened in House races. I can't believe that that won't be an extraordinary night, and I hope one in which we'll have some joy. On November 14th, a week later, to take a look at the question of crime. And joining us, once again, our own police commissioner, Ed Davis, one of the most fascinating speakers you'll ever meet. And Ed Powell, who's now at the Boston Foundation, but as I said, heads up the Street Safe program there. So that's going to be a fascinating evening. After the Thanksgiving break, we're going to take a look at education and early childhood development. We have Jim Sturgios, who is the executive director of the Pioneer Institute, one of the more conservative think tanks here, on charter schools. We have Paul Toner, on the other hand, who's the president of the Mass Teachers Association, and also a woman named Tassie Warren, who is one of the leading experts on child development and happens to be related to one of the co-conveners. And we'll finish up then on December 5th with immigration. We'll have Eva with us, Eva Malona, who's director of MIRA, the Massachusetts Immigrant and Refugee Advocacy Coalition, and I also hope we'll have Jeff Jacoby, conservative columnist from the Boston Globe, who's been writing on that issue as well. And then finally, on December 12th, on our very last class, we'll have a wrap-up and we'll be discussing all of these issues. We hope you'll come to as many of these sessions as possible. Let us know, what you think of what we're doing. We've got a blog. All of these lectures will be on YouTube the next morning. Cassie here is our videographer for the year. I think you've met John Sarve, who coordinates this class with me. So you'll be able to see anything you miss on YouTube the next day. We'll have an active blog, and we also hope to have a couple other things we'll introduce you next week with some of our students who are going to be helping us with this course. So that is what we're going to do. What we're going to do today, between Mayor Warren and myself, is kind of introduce this course. And the mayor is going to talk a little bit about his perspective on some of these issues, and particularly take a look at what does this election mean for a mayor of a major city in the United States. And then I'm going to introduce a lot of data. As you know, those of you who have seen me before, I do a few statistics here and there. We're going to do a lot of statistics. I've put together over the last 10 days a huge amount of data on where are we today in terms of federal spending, what are we spending money on, how has it changed over time, what about the deficit, what about the debt. And then I want to take a look at a very theoretical issue, the issue of what should be in the private sector and what should be in the public sector, on the basis that I believe that that is what this election is all about. And it always has been about that. Every election's been that. And finally, I want to comment on people that some of you in the room will remember and others never heard of. They're the people who brought us the news in the 1950s and 60s on NBC, CBS, and ABC. And contrast that with the people who are bringing the news to us on Fox, CNN, and MSNBC. And I'm going to make the argument at the end of today's class that part of the reason why we have such contested policies and such loud and noisy opposition has a lot to do with the new technology. But now, let's begin with my co-convener and very dear friend, Mayor Seti Warren of Massachusetts.